Well, good afternoon, Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon here from the Room to Room Weather Center, tracking a potential for some severe weather as we go toward this evening in particular. Not much on Mama Justice Doppler radar now, but we do expect that to continue to increase in issues that we're experiencing as we go throughout the afternoon and into this evening. Severe weather risk as laid out by the latest update. And again, we did a video push, putting that out there just a little bit ago. The new update has come out since that point, and an expansion in the overall risk area. For us in North Mississippi, it doesn't make a lot of difference. We'll show you where there are some changes there, but it's kind of more filling in the overall risk, really from some sections of Alabama all the way down to the coast there as well. But this large level 3 out of 5 severe weather risk, where we expect to have a large number of reports of wind damage in particular over the course of today and into this evening. So someone mentioned a bit warm for flannel. When I went outside to church this morning, this is just what I wore, just so I had my white t-shirt and hair done and everything for when I go in this suit a little later on. I'll get changed out of this. We'll get in the full suit. We'll do that whole thing coming up in a little bit. We're just not at that point yet. So the tornado risk, obviously, what tends to bring people here and discuss that. A level 3 out of 5 tornado risk. It does include most locations. This has been expanded slightly. I'll show you where it was earlier on. And then that expansion eastward. This is still pretty similar to what we had last night on the positioning. So overnight and earlier today, they trimmed that threat back a little bit and have expanded it back to similar spots. So again, this shows you there's some ebbs and flows, and there's some questions as to how this plays out and the confidence related to, I know you don't understand, but if you give me a little time here, Siri, I'm sure I can explain it even to you too. This is what we call a high shear, low cape scenario. There's a lot of strong winds that'll help rotation to occur. And in some cases, that rotation will kick out some strong wind gusts. In some other cases, it could potentially produce tornadoes. Primarily, I'd say brief tornadoes there. The wind risk is probably the most likely impact you and I will see. And I'm interested to see if it's starting to show up on here already. We do have at least some reports of power outages. Storm Chaser Ashton Lemley messaged me a moment ago saying, hey, we're out here in Lafayette County. Only 100 folks reported on here out. I'll bet the actual numbers run a little bit higher than this. This tends to be a little bit behind. But already some power outages from what we would call either gradient winds, pressure gradient winds, or just straight line winds. You can see there have been some of those back out for locations back on the plains as well with this. The strong winds with this overall storm system are kind of one of the factors. You can see back on the plains where we have peak wind gusts, 50, 60 miles per hour on kind of a widespread scale. That is what's rotating toward us as well. It has gotten breezy, but this is a lot of wind with this system, and that's where we're going to have the main issues. And sometimes that wind's going to be enough to rotate and produce tornadoes, and other times just straight line wind is where a lot of the damage will end up coming from today. So that's kind of the baseline on this. The wind is going to be the main issue. But if we come back to that wind threat, and we bring it back in here across Mississippi, and in particular up here in North Mississippi, that we have at level 4 out of 5 potential for strong wind gusts. Most of those are going to be between 50 and 60 miles per hour. But we could have a couple up to 75, and that's where you're in this kind of first level of blue here. You're in that destructive wind risk, and that involves all of us. That's not going to be most storms, but in a few cases, we could have 75 mile per hour winds. That's enough to rock and possibly cause some issues to your manufactured home. So I point that out to say that in advance of this is when we need to be thinking and preparing about, where we're going to go and planning ahead for that. So when we're kind of preparing ahead, some things to keep in mind. Of course, we want to keep that phone charged. We want to put on hard-soled shoes by this afternoon in case we do, have to come out from shelter and we have some issues there. Get those important medications and documents kind of together already. And then once we have those watches that are issued, and again, we'll talk in different watch and warning and all that stuff in a minute, but we want to make sure we're within at least steps of our safe place. And we need to be planning ahead on where we will be this evening because these are going to be strong enough that a manufactured home that's not built on a cement concrete foundation that is, cemented into that like any other structure. We don't want to be in one of those. We want to be in a reinforced shelter if necessary, but certainly a stronger building would be recommended for that. Here's the thing. The strong tornado risk involves all locations here across North Mississippi. This is our level 2, and you can't really tell just because of the gray bar in between, but this is that level 1, I should say, on that there, up to EF2 strength. A brief but strong tornado is possible. I think we're going to probably see more brief tornadoes than strong tornadoes, but it's not impossible to get that one that is up there, EF2 strength or greater. That's why we need to be thinking ahead, and that's why, of course, we also want to be building that armor, making sure we have multiple ways to find out if we're in the danger zone. You can find out more information about weather call. We'll show a graphic on that eventually there, but make sure you have multiple of these right there below me to make sure you have multiple ways to find out if you're in the danger zone. Our app has great alerts, but it should be just one layer in a more comprehensive plan. So with that in mind, let's start walking through some of the nitty-gritty details here. And again, actually, before we go, I will show the hail threat here for a moment. That's been one thing that has changed on this. The hail threat for today, we're looking level 2 out of 5. The reason this is not higher is because one of the questions we have is related to those lead storms, those lead rotating thunderstorms here. So this is the current outlook. The previous one, as you can see here, actually previous 2. So trimmed back a little bit because those lead storms, maybe not quite as convinced that they're as likely, but that's what we're trying to figure out here is how likely those are. And when you look at our, again, True Shield, a significant hail risk, you can see that if you do go back to midnight, Storm Prediction Center, Norman, Oklahoma, trimming that back, less likely to get up to 1.5 inches. Still probably some 1-inch hailstones out of this, but it is going to be that potential for significant wind in excess of 75 miles per hour and strong tornadoes in excess of EF2 strength that, again, are not necessarily high likelihood events, but possibly high impact events there. Let's talk about the limiting factor then, and that is this. This is the dew point. It's a measure of moisture based on the same scale as the temperature. Typically, when I'm talking about severe weather, I'm looking at these, and you can't hardly see it because I'm going to change my view here because we have that graphic up, but I do want to leave, how to stay prepared up on top there. We look for these dew points in the 70s. I'm like, that's what we need for tornadoes. Today, it is because we have such strong winds aloft mixing down that perhaps tornadoes could form where that measure of moisture is less limited and more available, is less available than usual. We have this area of moisture back out here in the Delta with lower to mid 60s dew points, and probably more lower 60s and mid 60s. Wind is coming out of the Gulf of Mexico here, kind of sucked into this main upper level system, and that is what is helping to generate all the wind that's coming along with it and will help to produce the storms today. So I'm going to go back over to our kind of surface map here on Mama Justice Doppler radar. And you can see kind of this big storm system up here and the way it's kind of really dragging in all the wind to it. So it's pulling lots of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico, but that moisture is coming in it's been limited on its initial arrival. That's a terrible way to say it. Here, let's say it easier. So that front there shoved it deep into the Gulf. It hasn't had a lot of time to return. And so our main limiting factor, and if you're one of those folks that believes that prayer works to intercede against weather, and I think that's reasonable, then what I would be praying for is that the moisture is not significant enough. Because we go back to that dew point there, that measure of moisture we were showing you a moment ago. We come back here. This is not high enough moisture for tornadoes. More moisture has to come in and will over the next few hours. But hopefully it comes in a limited enough fashion that the overall number of thunderstorms remains limited as well. That's our hope, our prayer, and still a possibility there as well. We show temperatures. They are warmish. Okay, they're warm, no question about that. Sorry, but maybe not quite enough. Mid-70s out there. If we had higher levels of moisture, that would be enough for more significant severe weather. We're hoping that, again, the clearing ends up being, limited as well. But, we could also help mix out a little bit of that moisture. Hopefully that's the case. Let me see if we got one of these high-res. Yeah, there we go. One of these high-res sections right over top of us. So let's set this to a 2-hour loop. We're going to make this 5 minutes. And we'll put that in play. So this is our visible satellite here. And in analyzing this, the darker is going to be where you're kind of looking through to just the ground, right? And you can see all kind of these bright, kind of puffy clouds moving forward. This is that moisture kind of surging northward. You can almost even see that wedge of moisture where it's kind of most impressive there. Storms back out into Arkansas, that's where they're going to form, and then they're going to move in. The question is whether or not there's just the right corridor or there's enough moisture out here to maintain those storms on a severe level when they get here. It is entirely possible that we have limited lightning. I don't know that we will, but I think it's possible we've got a very limited lightning out of these storms and yet still have a lot of turbulence, enough to produce brief tornadoes and also those damaging winds we're talking about. But looking here at this, I can see kind of an area where you're focusing, and you almost see a triangle here, right? Even some high thin clouds here aloft kind of obscuring our view to a certain extent there, but these don't look as strong out there toward, or as tall out toward Yazoo City. And so this is kind of our zone where that moisture is kind of focusing in, and we'll see how much is kind of left over by the time we get toward this afternoon with this. A couple cameras here to get an idea, just for my benefit with some actual data. I'm going to check out Yazoo City, excuse me, this is going to be Rolling Fork for a moment there. And so you can see, wait for that to update. So high thin clouds, and then kind of low flat clouds, 77, that dew point at 61. The atmosphere obviously less worked over there. We're going to come under the clouds in Winona. We're looking at these numbers here. Now notice how these are a little bit taller, a little more vertical development there. I was hoping the reporting station worked. We're still waiting on some of those reporting stations to come back after the storms we had last week. I think that this camera might be down, but I want to look at the data coming from it. This is our camera there in Oxford. Yeah, still waiting on power to be restored there. But that dew point, that measure of moisture, is mid-50s. You know, that's a 6-degree difference between Rolling Fork, which is right there, that other white dot, as you can see there, right there on our map, Rolling Fork, and the Oxford area. That's a pretty substantial difference, and that shows you that moisture is going to be arriving just in time to fuel some of these thunderstorms. Let's come eastward, come to the Tupelo area. So again, 54 there we show in Oxford, and the dew point 59, so it is a little bit higher here in Tupelo, and these storms have a little bit greater vertical extent to them. Why does any of that matter? That all matters because we're looking to kind of see what the real life situation in the atmosphere is, because when you get just-in-time moisture, models can overdo that a little bit, and a little bit overdone can be a big, big deal on, well, we thought we were going to have storms, and then we didn't. Depends on if that model that is overdone. So with that in mind, we're going to look nitty-gritty behind the scenes. We'll do that last. We're going to come back and look at Futurecast, and then we're going to look at that last. So then here is a look at our Futurecast. And I'm going to get rid of all that windshield stuff. I know I have to stop in every hour, so we can put this in play and be okay. So let's walk through this hour by hour. Now notice how this latest version of Futurecast here, and this is our HRRR model. We have a bunch of different models we look at here, but HRRR is the one I prefer in this situation. It does sometimes overdo storm development on these kind of initial discrete storms. So that is, I'm going to keep that on the table as a possibility that it overdoes some of those. But this is jumping all the way to 4 o'clock. Let's stop this. Let's bring it back to current time so we can double check its accuracy on this. So give me just a moment here. This model comes out once an hour. So if it's like, well, why doesn't he know exactly what this specific model is showing? Because this model's come out in the last, 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes. Come on. System here. Are we good? Clock's still going. We'll wait for that to fix this. Hold on just a moment here. I'm going to have to come back in and out on that for a moment because I've made the system unhappy. So just a second. And again, we appreciate y'all in the comments. We will answer as many of these questions as possible as we go through this. We appreciate you guys and Aberdeen and everybody else for supporting us here on Mississippi Live Weather as we do this. And again, appreciate our sponsors as well, whether it's Lee's sponsoring our storm shelters or Little's. It makes a big difference. So we appreciate that. Well, while I'm waiting on that to do its thing, I'm going to bring you over here to kind of our gross behind the scenes. Maybe this is God's way of saying, no, you really were supposed to start with that. So let's look here at same model. It's just not going to be as pretty. Okay, and let's zoom that in a little bit more. There we go. So again, same model, newest data, less pretty. What do we have? So this shows that this is kind of right here. This should be about 6 p.m. You can see those storms back there close to the Mississippi River. Some of these, again, heavy rainfall, lightning a possibility. But what's interesting about this is previous older runs, we would have this line here and not as much in advance. Let's look at the run-to-run consistency on this here for a moment. So while we do that, I'm going to have to fix one thing here behind the scenes. Just give me a moment. Apologize, I'm going to try to pat my head and do everything else at the same time. I'm going to reboot that computer back to the station while we're talking about this here. So this, we're going to look at previous runs at the exact same time. You'll notice if you go back toward last night, right, primarily, overnight, you have primarily one big line and some stuff ahead. Now notice on some of the latest projections here how the stuff ahead is more substantial, and then there's less on the main line. This highlights kind of a critical factor about what we're talking about here, which is there's only so much fuel to go around. And so you're not really going to get huge, strong storms and then tornadoes back here as well. If these don't strengthen enough and merge into that line, that's going to inhibit our tornado threat. That's risky to say, hey, hopefully that's the way that works out, but it's a possibility that that's the way that, again, could work out there. Let me figure out which one, links and switcher. And I'm pretty sure this one is links. So let me enable reset. Okay, we're going to reboot that computer there, and hopefully it doesn't break something else in the process. Okay, so as we go forward a couple hours here, and I apologize that kind of multitasking some things here. I kind of gave everybody time off until the time for us to all be in for storms a little later. But you'll notice, again, a couple of decent batches of storms. This time frame here would be about 8 p.m., 9 p.m. this evening. So I'm going to say 8 o'clock, I still kind of firmly believe is about our strongest time period where we're going to see stuff. So let's look at this, kind of compare this to previous runs. This, again, our latest version of the HRRR model. And so, again, quite a few thunderstorms developing ahead of a primary line. That is interesting. That's not typically what you see in a high shear, low cape scenario, which is what this is. So we're going to have to look at that fuel specifically to see why that. You can see So this is looking at older versions of the model. This is the same model run over and over again. It's the equivalent. I like to describe this because I'm not an Alabama fan, and I'm not a Mississippi State fan, and I'm not an Ole Miss fan, and I don't want to make Ole Miss or Mississippi State fans upset. So I always explain this like this. Alabama's good in football every year. We know they're going to be good in football next year. It doesn't matter the players are on the field, right? And so consistency allows us to know if something's consistently happening over and over again, that it's highly likely to probably happen again at some point in the future, right? And so we look for consistency, like in football, in our models here. And if they do the exact same thing over and over, we know to trust them. If they don't, then we have some questions there. Someone mentioned the screen is black. Are you sure? No, I see everything looks good here behind the scenes on what I'm looking at. So I apologize if it looks like the screen is black. But so the fact that we have this kind of breaking apart this line to where you could argue kind of 3 different batches, while I'm always a little scared when I have lead storms developing in a high shear scenario that maybe they get enough rotation to produce tornadoes, that's not the worst case scenario, because maybe what it does is it breaks apart some of the shear a little bit. We'll look at instability here in a moment, but the takeaway is on that whole consistency thing, that's a little more consistent, and that's a change, but it has been kind of a consistently breaking these off a little bit farther to the east, kind of doing that as opposed to just one solid line, which is really interesting. And we're going to have to kind of look at why. We're going to have to dig sort of through that. So this is that measure of moisture we were talking about based on the same scale as temperature. Remember we talked about all that moisture's down on the coast, and then it's trying to come up here. But you see, we mix down. We lose moisture between now and, say, 7 p.m. to 9 in Tupelo or down in Winona. The reason is the sunny skies. We mix that down. But we're not going to develop the storms here. We're going to develop them back out west and then move them into here. And so part of that process as they move into here is when we're going to have them strengthen and try to maintain themselves as they do. So I'm going to continue again. We'll do the whole conversation coming up here in a minute, so you can join that. But I just want to be thinking about ways to find out if we're in the danger zone. So having those multiple layers, and again downloading the app. We'll leave that up there. But notice the moisture, it's kind of maintenance. It's right at the leading edge here is where it's the most impressive. And you see that surge right there coming out of the coast? That's why this tornado threat does maintain itself overnight into Alabama. So my takeaway on this here is, again, that this is going to be just-in-time moisture. This is dribbling down the court. You got 2 seconds, 1 second left in basketball, and then you heave a full court shot. You might be very good at it. High impact if it goes in, but again, lower confidence because I'm not convinced that this moisture is going to be up here in a substantial enough amount to produce, strong tornadoes. Tornadoes, maybe. Strong tornadoes could be. I can't rule it out, but especially because of how strong some of the other components are to this. If we look at the rotation here, the storm rotation, or what we tend to call updraft helicity, we look for these paths, these tracks, these swaths depicted there. And notice that this does say those lead thunderstorms, if they can get enough moisture there, do put down some swaths that extend hour to hour here. Now, they are not extreme on the scale. Looks like the scale is just a little off the screen there at the bottom there. So they're not extreme on that. And hopefully I'll get the prettier version of this up for you coming up here in a minute. Yeah, my thought on this here is kind of looking at this, that means that this has at least some of those storms maintaining rotation over a few hours. And so it's possible that that strong tornado threat stays on the table as something that we could possibly contend with here. We'll try something else. I love the fact I have one computer behind the scenes that's misbehaving right now. And that might sound like a negative, but for me, I like it because that means that I get to kind of pretend tech support this while we're doing this to make sure I understand exactly how everything's working there. So let's now look at a different one of these projections on here. And so we're going to look at the amount of fuel available in a different way, what we call CAPE, or convective available potential energy there. And that surge of moisture northward makes it to where right at the edge, you see how you have the gray that's laid over top? That's where it's trying to say, yeah, you might have fuel, but you're not going to punch through. So this shows just how tricky it's going to be to get the greatest amount of fuel into our area related to this. I'm going to trigger this outlet here. Again, link switcher, outlet there, outlet 1. I need to cancel and reboot that. Yes, confirm. There we go. I think I did it wrong the first time. That's still connected, and that's okay. Nope. Might have hit the wrong one. Nope, I hit the right one of those. Okay, good deal. Okay, so let's answer some of your questions here for a moment. We're going to get the questions a little earlier than we usually do because of this. So that's fine. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Let's see some of your questions that you guys have. In other words, Matt really doesn't know what's going to happen. Hold on. Until it gets here. John, that is absolutely wrong. Here's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to have damaging winds before storms arrive, windstorms arrive, and after storms arrive. We're going to have some of those wind gusts, 40 to maybe 50 miles per hour before storms arrive. When storms get here, they're going to mix down strong winds aloft. Those strong winds are going to be up to 60 to maybe 75 miles per hour. As the storms are trying to produce those 60 to 70 mile per hour winds as they move from west to east through the area, they're going to try to spin up tornadoes. The only thing that I don't know until it starts to happen for sure is whether or not we will have strong tornadoes. We anticipate that we're going to have the right shear to produce tornadoes from time to time, but maintaining strong tornadoes in a low instability, that's what this represents, low instability, low CAPE, low fuel environment, that can be difficult. The only reason strong tornadoes are on the table at all today is because of how strong the winds aloft are trying to mix down to the ground level with this. So that is, to answer your question, John, there, the only thing that We don't know at this point here. And I'll be perfectly honest, my presentation would have been a lot better if this computer I'm about to pop up behind the scenes here hadn't locked up on me. But now that it's unlocked up, we can get forward and start talking about more of that there. So I'll have to give it a second here for it to start populating in. But this computer here has been down the entire time I've been working on the other thing. So it sometimes takes me a while to try to do computer tech support while talking you through everything. I'm sorry, my brain's not quite good enough for that. Anyway, like, subscribe, everything like that. And apparently I got a little salty there. This is a different John. I love old John Delusic. That was not that same John. But it is funny that it was a John. Anyway, miss John. I told John that. I was able to see him last week. Told him, really miss John. Miss team. But we've got a good one here. Okay, so let's now look at the prettier version of everything that I was initially planning on showing. And we'll start here with our triple threat. So triple threat is going to be a different model than what we just showed you. This is going to be our strike model. If you have not watched us or you don't typically watch us consistently, triple threat allows us to look at basically, let's go 12 hours here from right now. That should get us through most of it. Triple threat allows us to look at the damaging wind, the rotation, and the hail all layered onto the same graphic. And you'll notice how we already have some of the blues indicating limited wind damage potential out there already. And we've seen that. I'm interested to see what the power outage numbers have done, because power outage numbers, we talked, to one of our storm chasers a little bit ago there. Ashton Lemley was, reached out to us, and he mentioned, some power outages. We already have 500 to 600 power outages there in Lee County, Pontotoc County, stretching, back here toward Oxford. So, I mean, this is just before there's, it's kind of partly cloudy out there, but it's still mostly clear, or at least certainly dry at this time. So we're going to have power outages even before, and that's because of what we call the pressure gradient winds. I'm going to actually dump that onto here. So give me a moment to put on something kind of ugly on top here, but I think it is worthwhile. I think that'd be a forecast product. Yeah. And we're going to want Baron 3K, and we're going to want the pressure, surface pressure. There we are. And we do contour lines. Every 5 is fine, and I want contour lines only. There we go. Let's smooth this out a little bit. So this pressure like this is a way for us to see kind of fine fronts. With the big L's and H's that we put on graphics, we determine those from pressure. So you can see the center of the storm system, the very strong winds on the backside here where these lines are tightly packed together. The closer these are, the stronger the winds. And they're fairly close in advance, but they're also fairly tight behind it. That's why they have blizzard conditions with the snow up to the north, and then high wind warnings back out on the plains. So this shows us the pressure. And this pressure gradient, basically pressure difference force here, is what enhances those wind speeds and will continue to kind of ratchet them up as we go through today. So this kind of looks at our accumulated risk. And as you'll note here, between now and say 3 to 4 to 5 o'clock, before any rain has fallen, we show at least limited wind damage risk for most locations. We'll see more enhancement on the peak wind threat as this line moves into the area. Again, this latest version of triple threat here, something you'll see only here on Mississippi Live. Notice how storms start trying to drop some hail with them back out into Arkansas. That's where the purple comes in, and one there closer to Clarksdale. These hail-producing thunderstorms today are ones we're going to have to watch really closely. If it is in front of the line, like this one is, and it's able to produce hail, then that means it's got a strong enough updraft and enough rotation, it could potentially also produce a tornado. We would call that a discrete supercell, or a supercell kind of out by itself, a storm running ahead of the main line there. So the fact we have a couple of these, that one up there exiting northern Marshall County in the Tennessee would be another one as well, where we have some of those discrete storms producing hail and rotation tracks. And we'll look more specifically at the rotation tracks in a second. I'm just really interested to see how many of these lead storms produce hail. Many as they get farther east there. And then most of what you see is with that one primary line as it moves from west to east through the area. So this is your triple threat graphic that kind of shows all of our severe weather threats all at the same time. As you can see, we do have a hail threat. In some cases, a large hail threat. We do have fairly widespread wind damage threats, and we do have isolated rotation threats. So let's go possibility by possibility looking through this. You've pretty much seen the hail threat there on top. So we're going to move on and look at the rotation threat. And we've kind of layered that on top of our triple threat right here. And notice how we do have quite a few spots where, again, we have those rotation tracks showing up on there. So those rotation tracks there, as we kind of walk through the timing, first off, you'll see that the wind, obviously kicks up. And then there's that rotation track we were talking about, the one from Duncan area toward Clarksdale. Give me a second here. And I love the Bible and I believe in the Bible, but we also have talked a lot about we're not going to just do spam in the chat here. So if you post big spam things there, and we do get those a lot of times, we're going to ban you from this chat. You should hopefully be able to still see us on the page, but you saw how that kind of popped off there. Let's keep it clean as we can, and let's just be responsible, because there are people of all ages, including children, that are in these chats. So let's be responsible about how we post in there. But that had one thunderstorm there in that really 5 to 7 o'clock time period where it had one of those stronger rotation tracks, and this could run a little faster than this. Certainly our HRRR projections doing that. Outside of that, though, most of this rotation, you can kind of see our main line of storms there. That's what the outlines are. That's where kind of the radar, the storms that we're depicting there. As that progresses eastward, that's where some of those do kick out some strong winds and rotation out of those storms as well. Like that one next to the Amory back out there toward Russellville. Takeaway on rotation is this. Most rotation is going to be directly correlated to a storm that's producing some really strong winds. So it might be coming through with winds of 60, 70 miles per hour, and at the edge of it is where you can get those little rotation tracks to kick up. And so in looking at this, that's largely what this looks like, with the exception of what it depicted out here toward Clarksdale. And that's where this kind of uglier version of Futurecast we were looking at, we'll look at a prettier version of it here in a second, but that's where this comes in. And the fact that we are seeing some of those storms out ahead. That's getting way too wide. Let's click there. These storms ahead, the fact that we have these storms ahead there, these would be the ones that would be more likely to produce one of those stronger rotation tracks like this one we're looking at back out there toward Clarksdale. So that increases my concern of having one of those try to produce a tornado, and maybe a strong tornado. But the thing that helps all of these things is that fuel, that instability for thunderstorms is limiting factor, and models could be overdoing that a little bit. So that's our rotation breakdown and the tornado breakdown on this. Let's come to the most likely impact, and that is damaging wind gusts out of this. And so we probably are not in the extreme category for wind gusts, but where you see the brighter blues on here, that's where it is reasonable that we could have some damaging wind gusts in excess of 65, maybe 70 miles per hour. Let's talk timing for that. As that threat works eastward here, you can see that that is primarily with the main line of storms. You can see it kind of put down the brighter blue as soon as those storms go through Tutwiler and Charleston there, and toward Water Valley, and up here toward Bruce. So one thing you need to know about triple threat, and I'll put it in play mode, is probably the best way so I can kind of illustrate on this for a moment here. But if we show this kind of sweep through, apparently I have a few more pause points in here than I realized. Again, the bright blues that you see on this here, that is that wind, but it should connect. So the fact that you have kind of a line, and then a line, and then a line, and a line, ignore that. The reason we ignore that is because the way our projection works is it paints on where it thinks the thunderstorms are, and it goes a certain amount of time. Might be, I think, 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and then paints on another batch. 30 minutes later, paints on another batch. That's just the way all modeling works. It's not second to second, minute to minute. It's the same reason why when we show you radar, everything jumps, is because we don't get to scan it as often as we'd like. And on this, we don't get to have the output as often as we'd like. So this just as easily could be a connected batch of strong wind right up here for like an entire box there. It's just not, because our model doesn't. Don't get off by the fact that it looks kind of jumpy on here. That's just an artifact of the way in which the data works on this. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So that is triple threat. Let's look at the rotation track specific to our HRRR, our short range rotation track model here. And so this, again, updated in the last few minutes, and hopefully with a color table that's similar to what you guys have been used to seeing, what we typically show you here. So you can see the storms on our rotation track, and you can see how some of these leads thunderstorms there. Hold on, I want to make sure. I need to double check something here. It looks like that's one ahead. It's fine. Let's go rotation. Okay, hold on. Okay, that looks correct. And that looks correct as well. Okay. So when we look at these rotation tracks, we look for them to connect hour to hour. And notice this kind of lead batch of thunderstorms is doing that on here, as opposed to necessarily like the main, what would have previously been the main line. But it's really, I think, between 7 and 9:30 tonight that we have kind of our peak potential here, where some of these tracks do connect hour to hour here, and the rotation could be strong enough to produce tornadoes. There's going to be rotation all over the place on the lead edge of this. But one other thing I also see on this, let's change this timing rather than 48 hours. Let's make this 15 hours. Okay. So as we show that kind of coming eastward there, notice how I'm watching some of these up there toward Corinth. Let's individually kind of walk through some of these and talk about what this is showing and how this plays out. That looks like our precipitation. So it depicts where it's going to go for the course of that hour there. And you can see how it's this one that's back here toward Water Valley and Oxford there. There we are, the New Albany storm. See, again, that has some storms merging into it, extra shear. And then that one there connects to the next hour. So when these rotation tracks connect hour to hour, that's when we're more likely to have a tornado that is potentially a strong tornado out of it. So I have one there. Let's go back an hour here. Again, we're around 9 p.m. tonight looking there in Pontotoc. That one does not connect as well. It just kind of starts with that little blob right there in Pontotoc and goes from that. So that makes me feel better about that. Let's watch this one. This one does connect down here Grenada, but it never gets as strong up towards Shannon. But I think there's still some strong damaging winds at that as well. So takeaway on these, and let's look at this one back out here towards Senatobia. You know, we did have that other storm we were looking at earlier on the I think strike model that had one of these rotation tracks continuing in this zone. So we're getting at least some consistencies in northwest Mississippi of one of these trying to go down and stay down for a little bit. Hopefully not the case, and hopefully it's just primarily super straight line wind, which we don't want as well. We need to prepare for nonetheless as well. But when I look at this, I also see what is two lines here, and watch this second line rapidly catch up. So note the distance you have between these two lines here, right? I don't know if I can... Sheet of paper work? Yeah, sheet of paper distance between those two lines, right? Maybe a little more, but anyway, you get the point. Next hour, notice how that distance is closer. And the hour after that, see how much closer they are together? Like they're less than a sheet of paper now. So this secondary line is catching up, and that's where we get the real big kind of push. If these two can combine, where they combine, that's where that 70+ mile per hour wind threat's going to come from. And so there's going to be a time frame. This shows at 9:30 here from Tupelo back toward Kasia and Eupora. That is about as slow as I could imagine this going. I think I would typically expect it to go a little bit faster than that. But that's going to have, again, damaging winds and possibly tornadoes with it as it kind of unifies into one line. And even in this one line, you could start to see a few more of these kind of bowing sort of shapes. It looks like kind of a bow and arrow, right? And as that shoots ahead, that's where you get those strongest and most damaging winds out of that as well. So we all fall in that category where we could have those bowing segments, and this will continue producing strong and damaging winds as it moves into Alabama as well. So here's kind of our headlines on this. So we anticipate we're going to have primarily short-lived tornadoes. They spin up as this is trying to really punch ahead with some strong wind speeds, right? We're going to have damaging wind gusts that could be up in excess of 70 to maybe 75 miles per hour. Most will not be. Most will be 50 to 65 miles per hour, and honestly more 50 to 60 miles per hour. Because we're coming off the ice storm, and yes, you will get sick of me saying this, because we're coming up the ice storm, what that means is that we have some tree limbs and things that are already dangling. Those are going to get knocked down. Trees that are leaning, in some cases, going to fall. So there are some elevated concerns with that as well. Hail, I'm not as impressed, but I'll say this. Looking at our triple threat, it has more of a hail threat than some other projections do on this. So I'm still going to say hail up to 1.25 inches in diameter. Maybe something a little larger than that. That's a little lower confidence here than some of the other threats. And then I think it's going to be brief, heavy rainfall, not a huge flash flooding threat with this as well. Our timing, primarily from 5 p.m. near the Arkansas state line until 11 p.m. this evening. So if one graphic kind of tells us to your friends and your family, this is what we're expecting, that's the time we're expecting it. Might not be a half bad graphic to screenshot here, but if we're going to screenshot it, I'm going to change one thing about this here for a moment, and that's going to be, I'll put this on here, because one of the important things we need to do is we need to be thinking about building that armor, making sure we know where to go in the case of a severe weather situation, and obviously taking shelter there when the time comes. So we know when to go using a weather call, code red, the weather radio, but of course, weather call, the thing that I most strongly recommend. It's what I have for my family, what I think you should have for yours as well. You can download it again and more information there. While I'm going to pull up some things talking about sheltering, things of that nature. So give me just a second here. Tornado safety here for a moment. No, that's tornado formation, tornado safety. Give me a moment here while some of this loads in. So some things here that we kind of have put together. So we want to be thinking about, where we will end up sheltering. And so, of course, one of the places we recommend that is if you do have some local shelters. Underground options are always great, but the reality is that in any place we want to make sure that we have, some way to kind of cover ourselves up, a helmet that would protect us, footwear such as shoes and boots. When we go to our safe place, if we do that, those things, that certainly makes a difference. We also want to make sure that we are in the safest location, whatever building we're in. And so typically we're going to kind of want to identify a small windowless room in the middle of a home. So like we show an interior bathroom here. Notice there's 2 bathrooms depicted on this floor plan here. One that I guess might have been a master bath there for whatever that's on the outside wall. That's not what we want. It's not about being in a bathroom. It's about being in a small windowless room. Sometimes it's a closet. Many times it could be under an interior staircase. But those are the places when we start talking about your tornado safety rules, the places that we want to go. So we put this up all the time where it says, find your safe place. This is kind of what we're thinking here. But exterior walls, what happens, the way a tornado hurts you is it's going to typically pull the roof or bring something in from the outside and work its way into the middle, which is why sometimes there's a place in the middle of the home that is safer than some other options there. If you do have a basement, and again, I know that's something that we don't have often around here, that can obviously be your safe place. And as we mentioned a moment ago there, again, shelters, there are underground storm shelters, there are above ground storm shelters. Above ground storm shelters are perfectly good. I have one at my house for my family, and I don't even for a second worry about an EF5 tornado coming in here, because an above ground shelter is going to be as good as anyone could hope to be in this scenario, especially those reinforced concrete shelters that we talk so much about. As far as storm shelters go, we do have a new partner here with us on Mississippi Live Weather, and that'd be the folks up at Lee's Precast. and they are sponsoring our storm shelter page on our website here. But we have a full list of shelters on our website for around North Mississippi there that you could find and go to. So if you don't have a safe place or you don't feel like your location is a safe place, we have a list of shelters here. But I want to also mention something here for a moment. And I talked to someone, a woman at church about this today. Public shelters are great, but if your friends and family are going to be a lot more willing to come into your home and shelter at your location. So if you're willing to open up your home to your friends and family, sometimes it takes bribing, saying, hey, we're going to, have brownies if you come over and just sit here for a while this evening. Make it a game night. I know it's Sunday night's not as good for that as, say, a Saturday night would be or something like that. But if you don't feel like your location is strong enough, then you need to aim for someplace sturdier. I bring that up, and this is not to knock anybody or anything, but this is to say that statistics, not Matt Lawpon, statistics tell us that in the state of Mississippi, well, nationally, that mobile homes are never safe, and that you need to get out and get to a sturdier structure when we talk about tornadoes, because you're 20 times more likely to die in a tornado if your mobile home is hit by a tornado than you are if you're talking about a site-built structure. And it has to do not with the necessarily construction of the outside, but the fact that wind can get beneath it, lift it, and flip it. And even if it is tied down, those tie downs do weaken over time. They can rust. There's a lot of issues. If your mobile home, manufactured home, is on an actual slab, bolted down to a concrete slab, we might be able to make some arguments there that it's obviously safer. But statistics tell us that in the state of Mississippi, it's actually higher than that number there, believe it or not. This number comes from nationally from the Weather Service. I figured it up. It's almost 3 times higher than that number, your likelihood of dying in a manufactured home if hit by a tornado in the state of Mississippi. That's not me knocking any place. 360 days a year, you're just fine. But tonight's one of those nights that we need to be either looking at someone that has a storm shelter or a community shelter. And in the Mississippi Live Weather app, we have this list there. It's on the side tab. If you hit the little hamburger thing in the upper left-hand corner, that gives you the whole list. Or if you scroll down on the home screen, we have our list of storm shelters there. Identify where that shelter is and decide where you're going to go when the time comes. Also, I'll pop this up. This is something we use during it. The way in which you can help us during severe weather is to call your friends and family that are in the path. As much as, my weather call is great and whatever, what we do here, they're going to trust grandma and sometimes listen to grandma nagging them, or mom nagging grandma, the opposite direction there, to make sure that we get to the safe place. And research tells us that the only time men shelter is when their wives nag or bribe them. And that is scientific research, and I couldn't make that up if I tried. So let's pull up our discussion here. Let's try to answer some questions. So we'll put some questions in there. We'll hopefully answer as many of those as we can. And again, appreciate you all for staying with us, partnering with us, and we'll kind of go do a sort of overview of everything again here in a minute as well. Just kind of a quick kind of run overview there. So center of my house where my HVAC furnace is. My best spot shares an interior wall with it. Does that make any difference? No, I would say you want to. So there is no pleasant way to go through a tornado, right? I mean, there's just no pleasant way to go through a tornado. If you're going through a tornado, there are risks involved. Go back here over to radar, and we'll just kind of leave it on Mama Justice radar here for a moment. So yes, I think you're fine. If you have a Roku TV, I'm glad that Laura's mentioning that. Search for Mississippi Live on Roku. This is going to sound ridiculous. Don't search for Mississippi Live weather, because Roku kicks out any search result that says weather and you can't find it. So search for Mississippi Live on Roku to find it. So will a brick and concrete? Oh, I wanted to catch that one there, because I think this is a good one here. Where's it at? Oh, I don't see it there. Well, okay, that's fine. I'll try to stay with the ones that we have right there. So So Miley says she lives in a mobile home between Batesville and Clarksdale. Should I just plan to leave? Yeah. So let's make it a positive experience here, right? If we're going to be leaving, let's call somebody whose house we'd want to be at. Rather, yes, you can go to a public shelter. That is great. But if somebody has a sturdier structure, our goal is if you're outside, we want to get you to really kind of any sort of structure. If you're in, a place you don't think is strong enough, then we want to get you to a stronger home. If you're a strong home and you don't feel comfortable, go to some place reinforced, like a community sort of shelter. The idea is to just do better. Maybe not get the best. Some cases, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you we're absolutely going to have strong tornadoes. We need to be at a storm shelter to plan on surviving these. Tonight, it's not that extreme. So we want to think, do we have a friend or a family member that we can make this a game night? That maybe there's something on TV that we can watch. I mean, obviously, we don't want you to watch what we're doing, but maybe you have us on the phone there and you have something else on the big screen. Try to make this a positive. You can make this into a positive social experience by getting together and preparing and just being at that location, planning to be there this evening between primarily out west. The person was asking about Clarksdale. I think by 9 p.m., this is all done for Clarksdale. Still be windy behind this, so still sporadic wind damage after that. But I think you're all done by that point in time there. Is a public shelter or a sturdy home safer? I mean, I would say public shelters are going to be safer. If you're asking me what is safer, like at my house, we have my closet is our safe place. And the way in which it was made when we built the house was they poured, concrete for the foundation, but they had rebar already going into it and reinforced when they poured it, the rebar coming out. Then they blocked it up with concrete block. Then they poured in concrete inside the block all the way through. So it's essentially now solid concrete with rebar going into it. And then they poured a slab on top of that. So I have a very concrete reinforced closet. That's my safe place. And so I feel 100% confident with my family and myself being in that safe place in even the strongest tornado. Now, that's not to say that it 100% survives. It probably will. But even if it collapses on us during the middle of that, that would be very unpleasant, obviously, especially with that slab above. I think we're going to be fine. The goal is to survive. And so that's why we talk about storm shelters. Again, Lee's Precast is our sponsor, but the idea of precast is that the whole thing is encapsulating. There's not really something there that's there to break off. They're a good option. In those reinforced shelters for your house are all going to be good options there. So let's see here. Got a lot of questions about a lot of locations. When will suspenders will have this afternoon? I wasn't quite ready to change into it yet here. So I see some folks asking about some specific spots. So let's go over kind of the big overview here on our way toward wrapping this up. So here's the first thing we need to know. Specifically, if you are watching us here in North Mississippi or West Alabama, the traditional viewing area from my last station and now expanding back here to the Mississippi River, then you are under a level 3 out of 5 severe weather risk for today. This is based on the number of reports. We expect to have the greatest number of reports really in the country, potentially over top of our area. When we're looking at the wind damage potential, that is the most likely issue for us to have. We could have not just sporadic, but consistent and maybe widespread damaging wind reports here across the north part of Mississippi up into Tennessee and far western Alabama. So this is our most likely impact. So someone asking Tisch County or Lee County or Calhoun County, if you're in this, you're in the bullseye for we could have damaging wind gusts and sporadic power outages and all those sorts of things as well. The thing to keep in mind is in that zone, but all locations as well, I think it remains possible. You might have less reports of wind damage to the east. You might not. But I think we're going to see up to some 75 mile per hour wind gusts. That will not be most storms. But a 75 mile per hour wind gust is enough to start causing damage to, excuse me, give me a second to drink my water. Oh man, I'll be coughing on that for a minute. But a 75-mile-per-hour wind gust is enough to cause damage to a non-reinforced, mobile home. So that's why we're saying we need to plan to be someplace else, right? The tornado risk concentrated close to this bullseye here. And we expect that it's possible we could see a strong tornado. Again, everybody's included in this. So while, for example, Tisch County was the one that, and again, I'm not going to go specific on every location here, but I think going back and staying on the tornado graphic here for a second, Tisch County, South Tisch County there is less likely to see a tornado than, say, out here closer to Clarksdale. But there's no official cutoff, ooh, I'm just outside the orange, we're okay. That's not how this works. If you're a color on this graphic, and we all are, then there's a risk for tornadoes. It's just more likely to have more of them, and thus a slightly greater risk for locations out in the Mississippi Delta, Clarksdale, Shelby, Cleveland, Greenwood, Grenada, Tillatoba, Water Valley, and Batesville. More likely to have a tornado for those spots. But in saying that, there is still a possibility that even though you're maybe less likely, if a tornado were to form, that you could potentially have one where that potential kind of peak intensity is up to EF2 in strength. And that's everybody watching us. The hail threat, less than on the significant hail threat, probably not talking about a lot of those 1.5-inch hailstones. 1.25 inch seems reasonable, and the hail threat greatest to the west. I'll say this, looking at what we looked at a little bit ago on triple threat, I probably could have pulled this a little farther east. I really think maybe they should have, the Storm Prediction Center should have this a little farther east of where it is, especially if some of that isolated sort of lead development occurs. So I could have argued a little farther east on this, and maybe including this in that level 2 number of hail reports. But if you're in a color on this, and everybody except for far northeastern Alabama is, there could be some hail out of this. I hope that kind of explains and kind of narrows it down. So let's talk some timing here on this. We'll bring it back to the kind of the main severe risk graphic to do that. Let's clear this off. So let's talk some timing. As we've discussed before, I've got some really bad handwriting, but I'll do my best to make this legible-ish. So the start time, we'll say is early back here for, say, Cleveland and the Delta as, say, 5p. Until exiting Oxford, I'd say 8p. It should be done. If we're looking east of that, so 5p to 8p-ish, that's what we're kind of looking there for spots out here. East of that, if we're looking at kind of prime zone here in North Mississippi, we typically cover on Mississippi Live Weather or covered at the TV station as well. Let's go 7 to... Oh, I want to put 10, but I'm going to chicken out and put 11, I think. I'm going to say 10. 7 to 10 p.m. And then out east here, we'll say east of Columbus and Macon. I mean, listen, it could run fast enough still in the 8 o'clock hour. That's probably pushing it. Let's say 8p to 1a. If it runs fast, 8 p.m. there, Columbus. If it runs a little slower, I think closer to 9 seems more reasonable. But this is just kind of a general time frame. And these storms are all going to be kind of moving, generally speaking, this direction here. So that's our general motion on these storms, kind of working from west to east through North Mississippi today. So hopefully that kind of answers all those, what about my location there as well. So is it severe enough to go to shelter, and what time should it? You can see some times there. Or should it pass through? Well, I think we're going to have damaging winds out of this. You have to make an assessment. If you're in a well-built structure, and again, I can't tell you whether you think your home or whatever building you're going to be is in home well-built. There can be regular houses that are poorly put together, conventional stick-built foundation, houses. And there can be manufactured homes. I had an aunt and uncle that had a manufactured home on a lake in Oklahoma, and that manufactured home had a basement. as ridiculous as that sounds, and maybe it doesn't sound ridiculous. I'm sure someone watching right now has that as well. But their manufactured home had a basement in it. They had put in, it had been built into a hill, and there was a reinforced area and there was a basement in it. So there can be strong and reinforced manufactured homes. Most probably don't fall in that category. And then there can be weaker, standard stick-build conventional construction homes. And I'm not going to guesstimate how many of those there are. So if you determine that the structure you're in is not strong enough, that's why we again have this list of storm shelters on our website, where you can again find the storm shelters in your area there. So a lot of folks stop typing and reading. Yeah. You have a safe room in your house that is installed an exterior wall. Should be fine in a tornado. Torshell. So I don't know that specific safe room you're talking about, Kevin, but the purpose of the safe room, I anticipate that it's probably okay. I don't know again about your specific one, but mine's on to loop in my perspective. My safe room is on the exterior wall of my house. It's on the south wall of my house. And honestly, my biggest concern for my safe room is we live in the middle of the forest. There's a tree falling, but most of the trees I trimmed back far enough that we shouldn't take like a big chunk of one of those into it. It might be just kind of the top of a tree. So we should be fine in our shelter. But yeah, I wouldn't be concerned if you have a reinforced shelter of some sort and it's on an exterior wall. I don't think that's something to be concerned with there as well. So will you be able to see us on Facebook Live if you lose power? Yes. So we have a couple of, obviously a number of ways to do that. You're watching us right here. I can send this directly from my laptop if I want to. Now I might test that here in a minute as we're wrapping up just to make sure everything's going well on that. But I can send directly from my laptop here and completely cut out our downtown facilities there. If necessary, though, I can still do it the old way where we go right from my phone to yours. But if your power goes out, the big thing is hopefully you have internet or Wi-Fi or cell service there. You'll be able to pick us up there. We do have a radio partner with us here at Mississippi Live Weather, the folks at Wizard 106, one of our radio partners. At some point, we will greater expand our network. And if you're one of those folks out there that would like to help us with that, has a radio station, go ahead and reach out to us, info@msliveweather.com. So it goes to everybody because I'll miss it. And we'll try to kind of work some stuff out on that as well. Brooklyn asking, are schools closed tomorrow? This is all out of here by tomorrow. So by tomorrow morning, we're actually talking about maybe some rogue flakes. You're still going to school. And, golly, wind chills that are teens and maybe 20s most of the day. It's going to be a really chilly day. And then we'll frost and freeze by early Tuesday morning. We'll close to freeze tomorrow morning. And then possibly also Wednesday morning. Could be close to that as well. Let's see here. Appreciate you guys and everybody and for your support. And hopefully the question and answer has been good there. I'm praying right along with you, Faith, there, that God, calms the storms here as well. I'm glad to hear that Amanda has a storm shelter that she feels safe in there. Hope that. My thought on storm shelters is really pretty clear here. If you don't use it every time, it's not worth the money, right? They're not cheap. So I fully believe in above ground storm shelters. And if they can be in your house or really close to your house, that's the way you want to do it. Because in the middle of the night when it's raining, and this might not be the scenario, but you want to make sure you utilize it every time, or else it's a really bad investment because you're just making kind of an ugly box that you're supposed to go hide in occasionally. So you want something you use every time. That's not to dismiss in-ground shelters. Those absolutely work and are a good option. But personally, for me, I always think above ground just because my knees don't get younger as I get older. And last thing I want to do is risk breaking a hip getting into a shelter. At the same time, in order to rehab a hip, you have to survive a tornado. And so, yes, should you use your shelter tonight and every time if you have an in-ground shelter? Absolutely. It's just when people ask me my preference, that's my 2 cents worth on that there. Someone was mentioning this a second ago here, wanting to know more information about Weather Call. I'll put this up here and I'll kind of watch the chat behind the scenes here. So a way you can protect you and your family is by Weather Call. It's this QR code you see on the screen right below me there. It's a phone alert service, and I apologize if I've had some emails sent. We do tend to get questions about this. I have not had a lot of time to do this, to forecast this, to push out stuff and check emails. So email is the thing that's fallen down my to-do list. And I apologize, and I don't know that I'm going to get through it. But if you scan the QR code below me here on the screen, you can find more information about Weather Call. Why does Weather Call matter? Because in all this time here, I missed text messages. Oh, that's what happened. I think my thing came out a little bit. Hopefully that's fixed it. See, I missed text messages. Like I got one from someone important that said, your audio is cracking. Sorry about that. I can't hear myself. So I missed that text message. If that had been a phone call saying, hey buddy, your audio is garbage right now, I would have answered it. That's where Weather Call comes in. We mix text messages. We miss alerts. I think my app has even sent out an alert. Our app, while we're talking about this here, right? Some updates on the wind advisory. So you miss alerts. I miss alerts. But when my phone starts ringing, even if it's on silent, it's going to start vibrating. That's going to get my attention. That's why phone calls matter even in 2026, is because they bust through all the clutter to say something's going on. And Weather Call will call you if a tornado warning is issued for your area, if a tornado is confirmed to be moving toward your area, if there is large damaging hail or extreme damaging winds, or there's flash flooding in the form of a flash flooding emergency like what they had back in Texas last year. And those phone alerts can be lifesavers. You put in a location, it'll notify more than one number for that location. It'll monitor that spot, but you put it in maybe if you're a parent concerned about a kid who's in college, you could put it in for their location, and then they'll get the phone call, and you'll get the phone call when they're in the danger zone, and you can call them and say, we need to go. Or also, if you have elderly parents, it's a great option to put in the location for them so that you can know when they're in danger. I have it for my parents. I've had it for my family for a long, long time, and we, of course, recommend it for yours. That's Weather Call. Again, something I'm extremely passionate about, because the only two things that you can do, all of this stuff I'm showing you doesn't save your life. And I appreciate people that say all the time, that's what we do. That's not what we do. We give you information and empower you to save your own life. So how do you do that? You know when it's coming. That's part of what this is. That's part of what Weather Call is. It lets you know when you're in the danger zone. And then when you know it's going to get there, you actually have to take the steps to get into that storm shelter. Let's answer some more of your questions there. Okay, so storm's going for everybody. So Don wanting to know about Baldwin. You're just as likely as really any other location there as well. So Wanda's wanting to know if Weather Call is the same as NextGen they've had for the last couple of years. There's a few other little tweaks to the Weather Call that we have through Mississippi Live. There's some lightning monitoring that goes along with that. And I believe the flash flood emergency thing is different from what we had with NextGen back at the TV station. So there are a few little differences there. So if you shoot an email to info@weathercall.net, they can help you with that if you need to as well. Live in a trailer, should relocate in Columbus, Mississippi. Emily, yes, I would. If you live in a manufactured home, you definitely should, I think, be thinking about someplace else to probably spend the night, simply because if you're in Columbus there, for example, it's going to be late enough. It's going to be around midnight before it's all the way through your area there. So if that's not too late, you can go home after that's all said and done as well. There was a question I saw a moment ago that was, okay. So someone's asking, why can't that be free to help save people? Okay, Javon, that's a reasonable question on Weather Call. Here's the thing. Why can't your phone be free if you can use it for all sorts of different things? Well, because it costs money. And so delivering phone calls costs money. There's actual infrastructure that has to take the information, cut it out, and dial it and do the phone numbers. That infrastructure and that information costs money if it's going to be fast. So there's lots of alerts out there that are slow. Weather Call is almost immediate. If you've watched our coverage before, you know that there are times where I'm getting my weather call and I'm zoomed in on someplace else. So I get a personal weather call myself. And so I might be zoomed in down to a warning in Starkville, and then Tupelo gets put under a warning. The first time I find out I'm under a severe thunderstorm or tornado warning is with Weather Call live on the air. So Weather Call is fast. In order for something to be fast and reliable, it costs a little bit of money. So unfortunately, we work with another company on Weather Call. The company, as you might imagine, is called Weather Call. And so that's, yeah, anyway. So hopefully that answers that question there. So, and as far as things go, to a certain extent, when it comes to timeliness and you always getting it, you do get what you pay for. Our app is free, and I think it does a great job, but it has the same bloop as every other app known to man. And trust me, we're trying to get that fixed. And so that can blend in with every other bloop another app out there has. Weather Call is different sound. So that's why that's important. Okay, let's answer some of these. I've been told by a fireman in Columbus that they are not usually used for public, just for first responders. There are shelters there that I can tell you will be open in and around Lowndes County. We do have a list. I cannot guarantee it's a complete list at our website there as well, but you should be able to call the fire station or call downtown, and they should be able to tell you which is which there. Appreciate you, Shirley, and preparing ahead there for your folks, for your family certainly makes a difference there as well. Okay, so I see some folks talking about lots of stuff. Let's try to keep it nice and kind. Code Red is free to you, but Delisha asking about Code Red being free. So Code Red, and when we put our list on here of ways to build armor, I put Code Red on that list. Code Red is free, but it's not free. Local county and municipalities pay for Code Red, so they actually pay the company that owns Code Red to do that. So that costs money, but to you at home it does not. So why would you want Weather Call versus Code Red? I think you should sign up for both, but I'll see if I still have the last alert I have from Code Red. And again, you should sign up for it. Let me be crystal clear here. But I think that the audio used on Code Red does a disservice for everybody. So let me see here. So this is the audio from a Code Red I got a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week.
This message is for Matt Logon from Here's Your Message. The National Weather Service in Memphis has issued a asterisk severe thunderstorm warning for northeastern Chickasaw County and northeastern Mississippi.
We're at 20 seconds.
Eastern Pontotoc County and northeastern Mississippi. Southwestern Itawamba County and northeastern Mississippi.
30 seconds. So 30 seconds in is when you hear that, oh, if I were in Itawamba County, that it's from me. Weather Call's not like that. You get a phone call and it's like, this is Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon from Mississippi Live Weather. The National Weather Service has issued a tornado warning for your specific location. It is faster, and the timeliness of that, in my opinion, is where the value comes in, not just in the verbiage being used, but it gets to your phone faster as well. So that's the reason why I'm all about some Weather Call on that. Is I think that difference there makes a difference there. Wayne asking, unfortunately, we do. John is still at the television station. We love John, a dear friend and basically family member of us, but he is still over at the TV station with us. My team is myself, our meteorologist Maggie McCauley, Gabe Maynor, and Caleb Edelblut. We're going to have a combination of those folks involved and on with this tonight as well. Let's see here. Ultimately planning where to go and knowing where to go is a huge portion of this. Hey, let's go ahead and say a quick prayer here and then kind of wrap this up. I think we've kind of beat this horse as much as we can. Dear God, you're all knowing. And if there's something I need to say after this, please put it on my heart so that we can say it and not forget it, so that we can help these people. But God, just help me to give them quality information that's not hype, that's just whatever it is that you need to say today. Help me to have that information for them. God, help people to make wise choices, to make a reasonable and truthful evaluation of their surroundings, and follow that gut instinct to go someplace else if necessary. I know that you work through those gut instincts, whether people realize it or not. And God, I pray that you give that feeling to them if they need to be someplace else. But God, ultimately, just help protect us and help us to trust you in this time. Allow the moisture to mix down a little bit more. Allow the instability to prove to be slightly less, and let there be a little bit less strong winds mixing down with the strongest of these storms as well. But God, let your will be done, and maybe look dumb if you can, so that these storms aren't too terribly bad. I appreciate everything that you've done for me and my family, and the many blessings you've given us in this forum and opportunity here to speak with these people. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, we will. I don't know exactly what time we're going to fire up the live stream. We do have our next official live stream. That's going to be coming up here at 6 p.m. today. I know I got a bunch of times on there. That's our Monday through Friday times. One of these days I'll make a graphic that's just weekends. On the weekends, it's 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. We're probably going to be on before 6 p.m., especially if this runs any faster here in the Room to Room Weather Center. But this is our broadcast schedule most days. Check us out on all those different platforms that we've talked about before. And, keep it here for the latest. Before we wrap up, I'm going to come back to the chat one more time, just in case there's something over there in the chat that I'm supposed to be seeing before we wrap things up there. Appreciate all the amens there. And again, appreciate you guys for stepping up and riding with us on this here. This has been a very humbling experience the last couple of years. Last year plus, and the fact that so many of you trust what we're doing here is just, I cannot say it enough. It's very humbling, and it means a lot. So thank you. We'll do our best to take care of y'all. We'll try not to launch into coverage quite as early as we have the last couple of times we've had storms, but obviously as soon as we believe that there is a damaging threat out of this of significance, or if there's something we need to say, we'll be right on here. We'll do the push alerts. We'll do all the stuff to keep you knowing. But I'm going to say the headlines here, I think, for a moment, probably where we need to kind of wrap this up. This is our timing confidence graphic. So timing today from 5 p.m. in West Mississippi to 11 p.m. out east near the Alabama state line. That just as easily probably should have been 12 a.m. for Pickens and Noxubee counties. There's always some issues there. Those always linger a little longer. But tornadoes, not as likely as we are to see a damaging wind gusts out of this. We're going to get damaging wind gusts ahead of any of the thunderstorms and then behind the thunderstorms as well. We're just going to see our peaking wind gust as that main line moves through the area. And so I think wind damage report's the most likely thing that we'll probably end up seeing out of this. But I think as storms are trying to wrap up and produce that wind damage, you're going to get a couple isolated storms that produce tornadoes. Primarily short-lived tornadoes, but there still remains a possibility that if we were to see one, that it could potentially become a strong tornado. Hail, possible, as you saw earlier, and that heavy rainfall threat, something that we're watching as well. Keep it here for the very latest, and we'll continue to have updates on this coming up here a little bit earlier. Yeah, I see that mention there. Keep those cell phones charged. It's one of the many ways, again, in which you can prepare ahead of this. Have hard-soled shoes on when you go to whatever destination you're going to. Gather those important documents and medications and keep them with where you're at. Get within steps of your safe place. And this is one of those nights, I would recommend finding a stronger structure than a mobile home. 360 plus days a year, I would have no problem with my daughter living in a mobile home. But on those 5 days a year, I'd absolutely be on her list, like stink on you know what, to come over and get into my shelter here at the house when she gets older. So that's just my perspective. You do what you're going to do on that as well, whether it is making it family game night, cooking a special treat or dinner. Research is now telling us having a time to gather and get together, and not just to sit around and fret and watch TV. Yeah, somebody probably needs to have us on the app or on Roku or something like that to know what's going on. But you can also be doing something else at the same time. that is hopefully a positive family building experience, as opposed to just sitting there worrying and watching and waiting. Let's have that time to gather and try to make this into a more positive social experience if we can. Make sure you have those layers. Make sure you know where your safe place is. And again, those layers of protection as we wrap things up here. Download our app. That should be one of those. That's what those QR codes are there on the screen. And Weather Call is that personalized tornado warning service. You'll hear my voice. It'll call you and tell you when you need to get to safety. Keep it here for the latest. We'll see you guys coming up a little later this afternoon. And hopefully everything works out okay. And again, thank you so much for supporting us here at Mississippi Live Weather. If you've seen any of the icons down here in the corner, these people are the only reason we can make what we're doing free. Because I'm going to tell you right now, you guys are so amazing that there's not a TV station in the country that has the same provider of the app that we have here that has more people use it than you guys. This tiny thing we're doing here in Tupelo, Mississippi has more people utilizing the app than Detroit, Michigan does. And that costs money, a lot of money. I budgeted here for some things. We're paying the bills right now, and all the bills are getting paid by the grace of God. But our overages per month are more than I was expecting out of salaries, and more than I pay for salaries for all the people involved here, because of how much you guys are using the app and watching this stream and supporting us. Don't change it. Keep doing it. But just know that we're able to pay these bills because of these people that you see down here on the screen. So support these businesses that support us here on Mississippi Live Weather. It's the only way that we can keep this free and we can keep it going for you. So folks like IMPC, for example, have been with us since about the first month and a half of us starting. You know, the way in which you spend your dollars, you can tell them that, and again, one of our newer folks, JVH Beats, if you've heard the music update there, they make those. But you know, like the people that we represent there are spending their money to advertise on this because they think it's a platform that people use, but also because they think it's a community service. So let them know you appreciate it, but also show them the money as well. If you have an option, choose these folks to do your business with and tell them Matt sent you. Remember those commercials where they'd say that? Tell them so-and-so sent you. Well, tell them Matt sent you. Appreciate Mama Justice. Appreciate everybody. And most importantly, appreciate you. Thank you for supporting us. Okay, we'll be back a little bit later.
As a bankruptcy firm, Mitchell, Cunningham & Bowling realizes many people are worried about their finances. We're here to guide you through the next steps to restart your life with easy video appointments. New clients don't have to leave home to get information about becoming debt-free. Also, convenient in-office appointments are available at the low cost of $340 upfront for a Chapter 13. You can be on your way to being debt-free. Contact Mitchell, Cunningham & Bowling today or visit our website at mcdebtfree.com. We are here to help you.